Ready? Start. As the global economy has been driven apart by Donald Trump's wide ranging tariffs, the Reserve Bank of India on Wednesday announced a cut in its basic policy interest rate by 25 basic points in the prevailing environment of deep uncertainty. A marginal cut in the policy rate is neither here nor there. It cannot have any significant impact para, but the move has a signaling value. This tight little cut in the repo rate introduces a phase of softening of interest rates from now on. That is important. The Reserve Bank's new governor, Sanjay Malhotra, has observed in his policy statement that the RBI now moves on from a neutral stance in its monetary policy to an accommodative stance. There lies the crux para. The major players can now expect that RBI's policy state should now be more encouraging growth of the Indian economy than its primary concern as a vigil over the price front. Maybe that is a reasonable stance in the current context when Indian growth rate has just recovered from what the governor described as underwhelming. RBI is seeking to encourage growth over inflation management in the current context para. The Monetary Policy Committee, which is tasked with the formulation of the monetary policy, unanimously agreed on the rate cut. It felt comfortable about such a decision when the inflation rate has shown falling trend. The RBI has enough reasons to maintain that inflation rate should converge on the target level of 4% in course of the current year. RBI always said its decisions are always data driven, more particularly for the critical indicator of price. The RBI follows the trends in CPI closely. The figures speak for RBI confidence in inflation management para. CPI headline inflation declined by a cumulative 1.6 percentage points during January to February 2025 from 5.2% in December 2024 to a low of 3.6% in February 2025. This could happen primarily because two major components of CPI, food and fuel prices, have traced lower levels para. RBI has cited with a strong seasonal correction in vegetable prices this year. Food inflation dropped to a 21-month low of 3.8% in February from 5.7% in January 2025. Additionally, deflation in fuel group year on year was at minus 1.3% in December 2024, minus 1.5% in January 2025, and minus 1.3% in February 2025. Para. Thus, with that headache over CPI trends now seemingly under control, the RBI choose to concentrate on encouraging growth. This is a particularly important in the present geopolitical situation. The global economy is melting down under the heat of terms unpredictably harsh and unreasonable steps. Global growth is feared to go down several notches according to a computation of the OECD para. Against this background of uncertainty, the RBI worked out the implications of the recent global trade and related policy uncertainties in the fate of the Indian economy. Governor Malhotra has summarized these threats. First and foremost, Uncertainty in itself dampens growth by affecting investment and spending decisions of business and households. Second, the dent on global growth due to trade frictions will impede domestic growth. Third, higher tariffs shall have a negative impact on net exports para. In this context, in RBI assessment, the domestic growth inflation trajectory demands monetary policy to be growth supportive while being watchful on the inflation front. We are aiming for a non-inflationary growth that is built on the foundations of an improved demand demand and supply response and sustained macroeconomic balance para. So far so good. There are at least two vulnerabilities which RBI seems to have accepted as fairly stable and comfortable. First, India's services exports, and secondly, the possibilities of financial instability triggered by the global financial markets gyrations para. The Trump tariffs have not taken into consideration the services sector, and the tariffs have been placed on merchandise good products largely. In case Trump suddenly veers around on services exports, India could be extremely severely hit. Our physical goods exports account for just 2% of GDP. Services exports constitute a far larger proportion. Para. Any moves crimping on services exports can paralyze the Indian economy. Even otherwise, India's services exports are facing an existential threat from the advances in artificial intelligence AI. Many of the services exports constitute of repetitive and predictable services. These services could very well be done by AI tools and thereby makes the work done by the lower software developers and coders para. On top of it, if Trump looks at the services sector and decide to come down on these, they of all countries India would be worst hit. From this viewpoint, India is doing right, adopting a low-key instance and even accommodating some of Trump's whimsical demands until now, as China and European Union fight it out with Trump and settle scores. However obnoxious it is, there is little point in seeking to fight with Trump's stance at this stage. Para. Their second weak point is the financial markets upheaval, as witnessed last time in 2008 during the global financial meltdown. A seriously disturbed financial markets could quickly be transmitted to the real economy and bring in its train economy wide meltdown. What we need thus is firewalling the Indian financial sector from the severe gale force of the global financial markets para. Any financial market instability globally results in withdrawal of investments of foreign institutional investors. They are hit back to back. The foreign exchange market and exchange rates will fluctuations in exchange rates, and as has been witnessed earlier, progressive depreciation send shock waves throughout the economy para. As in case of 2008 meltdown, RBI had effectively insulated the Indian financial sector from this global transmission. Maybe RBI should have begun these exercises right from now. At least some indications of RBI's thoughts on these broader aspects could have been timely and reassuring.